Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at... Wait a second, what's going on back here? How long has it been like this? Not very long, right? I hope. Alright, let me just adjust this a little bit more, and turn... Alright, there we go, that's better. Man, I've had the camera zoomed in on the sky for how long? At least a few videos, I think. Why didn't somebody tell me? I can't rely on you people for anything. Alright, well anyway, finally we're back to the beautiful view that we're used to. It's been a while since I turned around and had a good look at it. It sure is nice. I'm so glad I escaped hell. I love it here on Earth. With its beautiful blue sky and its gorgeous evergreen trees that grow barrels of whiskey and whole roast chickens. I really couldn't have asked for a better and more satisfying outcome to that plot arc. What was I doing? Oh right, video. Play the video. Play the video.
Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope you had a great Christmas celebrated with your family. Hope you received your Christmas gift.
I did not. I've been waiting, but I'm starting to suspect you might not have sent one.
Definitely, I did receive my Christmas gift on the morning of Christmas Day.
Yeah, see, yours got there ages ago. You're welcome.
But it was a very unexpected Christmas gift.
Look, I don't have much to my name, all right? But when I get hungry, I enjoy a salted millipede, so I thought maybe you would too.
It was my first official rebuttal.
Oh, wait, so are you telling me the bag of millipedes didn't show up? I swear to God, the postal service in this place, you can't send anything nice. No matter what it is, they just eat it.
This guy here, called Logicked, which is apparently one of the most popular atheist channel on YouTube.
Yeah, weird, right? I don't get it either.
Had picked up my video and had decided to officially create a rebuttal, not in one, not in two, but in 3 parts.
Yeah, I never learned my lesson.
And this was the very first part. Now, I decided to watch the video, of course. It lasts like 30 minutes. And it just goes over the very first probably 7 minutes of my brief video. I was very disappointed. It's pretty boring. It goes over and over in circles around basically 2 or 3 points without even scratching the surface of the argument I'm making.
Okay. Well, you understand, if I'm going around in circles, that's because you're leading me around in circles. I'm responding to you. I'm not the one choosing the topic. You're the one choosing the topic. You're the leader of the conversation. If it starts to seem tedious and repetitive, that's because you're talking in a tedious and repetitive way. And I'm just following your lead, talking about whatever you're talking about at the moment. It's interesting that you're trying to shunt the responsibility for your video's repetitiveness onto me. It seems to match up pretty well with the behavior on display in your original video, which was you trying to shunt the responsibility of the burden of proof onto other people. Speaking of responsibility, I notice you have a potted plant there in the background. I'm going to choose to take responsibility for that because I said this. At least get a potted plant and some teal paint. It'd make me want to puke, but at least I wouldn't feel like my eyes had glazed over. No teal paint though, which is probably for the best. Unfortunately, no range hood either, which I'm very disappointed about. This guy's got no regard for fire safety. Anyway, so I think in this video there are only 3 clips of me talking, which is helpful, so I think what I'll do, unless it's important to actually play those clips for context, is just summarize basically what I said in them, so that everyone's on the same page about what we're talking about. So in this one I say the burden of proof isn't some magical property that gets applied to a claim based on how silly it is. It's just the practical reality of having a conversation where if you say something's true, you back it up. Assuming, of course, that you actually care that the other person believes you.
The whole first part is around the burden of proof. Who holds the burden of proof? So
well, no, not just the first part of my video. That's the whole point of your entire video. Granted, you talk about other things in that discussion, but that is the central point, is that you redefine God and therefore you don't have the burden of proof anymore. Of course, when you bring up the central topic of the video, I'm going to spend some time addressing that. Otherwise, what's the point?
On the atheist side, you always the default point is, okay, you make the claim that God exists, you have to prove it. You have the burden of proof.
Well, no, I would say you make the claim that giant blank space where you can write anything, you have the burden of proof. I don't care if your claim is the sky is blue. If you go to someone who doesn't believe that, for whatever reason, and make that claim, you can't just expect that person to change their mind because you said so. It's going to take effort on your part. It's going to be a burden on you. They're not going to just relieve you of that burden out of some kind of, I don't know, sympathy for the fact that that you would like them to believe that now, please? And now, yes, I am repeating things that I said in the original response. It's just, I want to be clear that we're not just talking about God in this case. We're talking about any claim you make. It's a general principle of human communication.
Sure, in a sense.
Okay, video over then?
Now, this video that I made was exactly to try to challenge this default point of view, which I believe is not correct.
Yeah, I know you don't. You were demanding that we interpret it in a completely harebrained, non-standard, nonsensical, pointless way to suit you. A proposal that you, of course, completely failed to convince me of, and therefore I rejected it entirely. You failed to meet your burden of convincing me that this is a useful way to think about this concept.
Why? Because the underlying assumption here is that atheism does not claim anything. Atheism just says, I don't believe your claim.
Okay, yeah, by like the soft atheist definition, atheism makes no claim. But that's completely beside the point if you're trying to refute the idea that you have the burden of proof to support your claim. Because then all it is you saying, well, I don't have to support my claim because you also make a claim. So what? Then you have the burden of proof to support your claim, and I have the burden of proof to support my claim. That changes nothing about your burden.
What I'm trying to challenge here is this default process that atheism wins by default. Atheism is the null hypothesis.
All right, I don't like the term null hypothesis used in this way. That's a term from science that people have kind of appropriated into these atheism-theism discussions. And in science, it doesn't usually mean exactly what people mean when they use it here. And I fully understand what people are trying to say when they use it. It's entirely possible that I'm guilty of using it myself at some point because it's so ubiquitous in these conversations. But personally, I prefer something like default position. Just a nitpick, not really important. I'm not going to bother mentioning it again. But now, about the burden of proof and the default position, what people are trying to tell you when they bring this up is not atheism wins by default. None of this is about who wins the conversation. All people are saying to you is, look, on any given question, your default state is going to be not having an opinion. This is, for example, why religious parents tell their kids about God when they're growing up, rather than not doing so and having their kids probably end up like me. Initially, not even cluing in that there was an idea there, and then once I got the point that people around me had this idea, thinking it was some kind of weird fantasy story they were talking about. That's all people are trying to say about non-belief being the default. They're not trying to say, I win because it's the default. Or if they are, it's because they're incredibly stupid. What's true is not defined by what's default. Obviously. I think it's reasonable to say that in many circumstances, the wisest position is no position at all, if you lack the information that would justify any given position. But that's not to say that no answer is the correct answer. Of course it's not the correct answer. On any given question, there's a truth. God, by any given definition, as long as that definition is clear, either exists or it doesn't. The truth is yes or no. But if you don't feel you have a good justification for leaning towards yes or leaning towards no, then just don't lean. It doesn't make you right. There's nothing there to be right about. It just makes you not wrong. As for the burden of proof part, that has nothing to do with whether atheism is the default position or not. This applies when you're talking to anyone holding any position, default or not. Take the God part out of it. That's confusing the issue, apparently. Let's make the situation instead that you believe Malaysia exists. Well, I don't think believing Malaysia exists is the default position. I don't think people believe in the existence of Malaysia from the time they're born. I think most people eventually find out about Malaysia from, like, the news, or looking at a globe, or maybe if their school is feeling especially ambitious, they learn about it there. Believing in Malaysia is not the default position. And so I come along and I say, hey, listen, I want to change your mind about that Malaysia thing. I think you got that dead wrong. Okay, well, you aren't suddenly burdened with proving to me that you don't have to change your mind. I want action from you. If I'm so enthusiastic about it, the burden is on me to cause that to happen. The question of what's the default position has literally no bearing at all on the question of who has the burden of proof in a discussion. These are completely unrelated, separate issues. You're failing at making very basic and very important distinctions.
Atheism is the null hypothesis. No, it's not. It's not. Why?
It doesn't matter. We're not talking about what's the default position. We're talking about who has the burden of proof. A question to which the question of whose position is the default has no relevance.
Well, if you watch my video, you would have understood why. The definition of the God that I put there is exactly to challenge the atheist. Of course, it's a very minimal It's a very minimal definition of God.
Yeah, it's a definition of God so minimal that almost nobody on this planet would consider it sufficient as a definition, which is, of course, why in basically any of these discussions, that's not the definition under discussion. And when theists say they believe in God, or when atheists say they don't believe in God, they're not talking about the thing you're talking about. And therefore, it's a gigantic, pointless red herring that, for reasons nobody really can fathom, I spent 3 videos on. I don't have reasons for the things I do, I just do things. In any case, though, regardless of how you define the thing that you're claiming exists, the burden is not on me to believe you just because you told me to. The burden is on you to convince another person that it exists if they don't initially accept it. And that was, of course, the reason why I spent so much time challenging you on basically every element of your definition. You acted as if every element of it was just obviously real. Nobody would ever ask me to demonstrate the reality of something like this. Everyone already believes in something like this, and I don't. I believe in almost no element of what you defined. That's not to say I think it does not exist. Of course, your definition is much more minimal than the usual definition of God that theists propose, and so it's much less justifiable to say this doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean I accept it. But even if I did, all that would mean is that your burden of proof is not especially burdensome. It would mean that you found that burden very easy to shoulder, and that either I already believed you or that you found it extremely easy to convince me to believe you. That doesn't mean the burden was not yours.
But if we don't even agree on that definition, of course, there cannot be any other discussion on all the possible properties that this God may have.
Oh, I see. I didn't realize that's how it worked. Very interesting. So that doesn't just go for God, right? That works for all words. Okay, then. You're an idiot. Now, of course, the definition of idiot is just person. And therefore, of course, the default position is to believe that you're an idiot, and that the burden of proof is on you to show that you're not an idiot. Because, of course, it's obvious that by this true and accurate definition of the word, you're an idiot. And so it'd be very silly to say you're not an idiot. So the fact is, you're an idiot until you prove otherwise. Of course, it's a very minimal definition of the word idiot. And you might have some silly little objection, like that this is a word with a more specific, commonly understood meaning already, and that I'm just removing distinguishing elements from it so I have an excuse to call you an idiot. But if we can't even agree on this very reasonable minimal definition, how can we have a discussion of what other properties an idiot may or may not have? First, you have to admit that if at any point in the future anyone calls you an idiot and you disagree, what you mean is that you're not a person. Otherwise, you're just being unreasonable.
Now, the point is it true that atheism does not make any claim? Of course not. Atheism makes a huge claim, and that was the whole point of my video. If you define God as the cause of the universe, the uncaused cause of the universe, atheism translating to I don't believe that the universe is caused by anything.
Yeah, and if you define God as a fork, atheism translates into I don't believe there are forks. What's your point? Look, all of us people engaged in the theism-atheism discussion, we're trying to have an adult conversation. And when some idiot runs in and goes, hey, all of you people on all the different sides, none of those words you're saying mean what you say they mean. I've swapped all the definitions around and now you all look stupid. People are just going to politely wait for you to leave so they can get back to their actual conversation. Regardless, though, if you redefine atheism as not believing the universe has a cause, or if you make up a new word, which would be far more appropriate, it's a distinct concept from atheism as basically anybody understands that word, so let's have a different word for it. English is a big language, but I think we can spare a little bit more space in the dictionary if we have to. But anyway, if you make up this new word or redefine a word and say that means not believing the universe has a cause, that's still not a claim being made, other than, of course, the claim that you don't believe the universe has a cause. It's not claiming the universe has no cause. It says nothing about whether the universe has a cause. The only thing this label says anything about are the people who meet the definition of the label.
I don't believe that the universe is caused by anything, which is a huge claim. It's not, I don't claim anything. It's a huge claim. Why?
Yeah, why? Yeah, I don't hold this belief. That's not a very huge claim. People don't hold all kinds of beliefs. There are literally infinite beliefs that somebody doesn't hold. In fact, every person has infinite beliefs that they don't have. How is it enormous to claim that there's one more? What is the problem here? Are you failing to make the distinction between not having a belief that the universe has a cause and having a belief that the universe does not have a cause? Not to mention between having a belief and making a claim. Those are also different things. That's what it is, isn't it? You're consistently failing to make elementary school level distinctions. Look, I'd tell it to you in Italian if I thought I had to, but your English is way too good for this to be a language problem. You're either massively failing to think about what you're saying, or you're doing it on purpose. I don't know which it is, and I don't really care either. Either way, it's irritating.
Because everything that we see in reality is caused by something else. And claiming that the universe itself is not caused by anything.
That's not what you just said. You said not believing that it is caused by something, which is entirely different.
It's just a huge claim.
And based on what you've said, it's not a claim that's being made. If I grant this entire situation to you as described, which of course is already a complete stretch because it's based on granting you your nonsense redefinition of the word God, but if I do it, this person has made no such claim. You're lying about what you just said. Here are your own words.
If you define God as the cause of the universe, the uncaused cause of the universe, atheism translating to I don't believe that the universe is caused by anything.
So the only claim is I don't believe X. There is no claim there about the universe. There is only a claim about the internal mental state of a person. And then seconds later, you claimed that no, this is a claim about the universe. Did you think people wouldn't notice? What are you doing?
You could say that's my position, but it's not something. It's not the null hypothesis.
Again, are we talking about who has the burden of proof, or are we talking about who is in the default position? You're treating these things as if they're aspects of the same question. They're not. Again, a massive, crucial distinction that you're either failing or refusing to make. For what it's worth, though, in this context, I'll reiterate that not having an opinion on a topic is the default.
It's not the obvious thing. It's just an assumption. It's just your opinion.
No, it's a lack of an opinion, a lack of an assumption. That's the whole point of I don't believe the thing. It doesn't mean there's something else there, although of course it can. It just means the thing you're referring to isn't there. In this case, belief that the universe has a cause. This doesn't even begin to address the question of whether this person believes the universe doesn't have a cause. There's zero information here on that subject, or on what assumptions or opinions this person might have. I don't understand how this is complicated. Listen back to what the words say, unless you've redefined them all. If you've redefined all these words in your head, there's really no point in any of this, is there? But that does seem to be a thing you love to do. Redefine words until language becomes useless.
And my opinion that the universe was caused by something, but your opinion that is that it was not caused by anything.
Not what was said. If you don't believe X, that doesn't mean you believe Y. This is in no way complicated.
They are on the same level. It's not that I am making a claim and you're not making any claim.
If a person says, I don't believe that about the universe, they're not making a claim about the universe. Your claim that the universe has a cause is a claim about the universe. How are you not making this distinction?
You're making a claim that is as preposterous as my claim.
So somebody claiming to know something about their own state of belief, or lack thereof, is as preposterous as you claiming to know the origin of the cosmos. Please.
Okay?
No.
So this is the first thing.
There are more things. Oh dear. This is not looking good for my health. All right, so he goes over his pyramid example again, which we've covered before, and I'm pretty sure we'll cover again in future responses.
The burden of proof is not on whoever makes a positive claim. The burden of proof is on whoever makes the silliest claim, the most unreasonable claim.
No, the burden of proof is on whoever's trying to prove something. Do you notice how the words describe what it is and why it is? I would like to prove something. Okay, I'm going to have to accept that burden. You can leave the burden on the ground. You cannot bother to prove what you say to anyone ever. Okay, if you find it silly that other people don't believe you, fine. Call them silly and walk away. They won't be convinced, but that's fine. You didn't want to prove it to them anyway. You didn't feel like bothering. But if you do want to prove your case and change this person's apparently very silly opinion, take the burden and prove it.
So can we move on from this silliness?
Do let's. I can feel the blood coming out of my ears already. All right, so the next clip is basically just me saying that I think it's staggeringly ambitious to claim that some entity is logically necessary.
Yes, absolutely. Is a staggering claim. Of course, it's a staggering claim, and I'm not claiming I'm proving anything.
Okay, whether you're claiming you're proving anything or not, you're insisting that something like this exists. That's the whole point of the video. You create this minimal definition of God that's a necessary first cause, and then you insist that it's incredibly silly not to believe this. Whether you claim to have proved it or not is really a separate issue.
But the same exact thing can be said for the atheist position. The universe is there just because. Isn't that a staggering claim?
That's not the atheist position. Did you forget what we've been talking about this entire time? Now, of course, you're trying to redefine the term God, and by proxy, the term atheist, to broaden it out enormously, to include things that most people would never consider it to actually include. But in that case, if somehow on a social level we succeeded in redefining this word in everybody's heads, people would just drop that word and use a different word. Their ideas are still the same. And the idea itself, that the word atheism is a shorthand for, is not the universe just exists just because. If you claim that that's the position that people are trying to express when they use the word atheist, you're just lying. It is entirely false. Now, somebody can be an atheist and also make that claim, but those are two different things. They can just as easily be an atheist and not make that claim, or make the claim that the universe most definitely does not just exist just because these are distinct, independent positions. And, I'm explaining this as if you don't know it, but I'm starting to think maybe you do, and this is more malice than stupidity. Because this stuff is so basic that I think that a guy of your age and with your intelligence, and I know that you have intelligence, would never fail to understand it. The idea that you're just innocently misunderstanding at this point, to me, is another staggering claim.
To me, that is staggering claim. That is a staggering claim. Why? Because the universe is not necessary. Why? Because it's made up of very contingent things. It's expanding at a certain velocity, at a certain acceleration. It has a certain content of matter, of energy, subject to certain physical laws that depends on particular parameters, and so on and so forth. It's very contingent. There are many other universes that could be there, but they're not there.
Which I don't think is demonstrated at all. I think this, other universes are totally possible stuff is just you saying things. Sure, you can tweak the math and get all kinds of other answers out, but that doesn't say anything about the actual universe. Your math is just an abstract representation. It's not reality. At best, if you give it good inputs, realistic inputs, it's a decent, approximate description of reality, but it's not the reality itself. If you change all the math and change all the numbers, that doesn't change the universe. It doesn't mean that another universe actually could have been there, that all these properties of it actually could have changed. I've never seen any indication that any of this can change. I mean, change it. You can't. Destroy energy. Make there be less energy in the universe. Let's see. I'm not even convinced that the changes you would make in attempting to make that change aren't already accounted for in the way the universe is. We'll talk about the block universe again. I think it's in part 2 of this. I'll probably respond to that too. All of this stuff about the universe could have been a completely different way. It's all a guess. There's no demonstration of any of it. There never has been. Now, because I know you have difficulty making basic distinctions, I should clarify, I am in no way claiming that the universe is necessarily the way it is, that none of this stuff could have been different. I'm not claiming the universe is necessary. I'm not claiming the universe just exists just because. I'm making no claim at all about the origin or the nature of the universe. That's what you're doing, and if you want to do that, fine. I don't have that level of arrogance. All I'm pointing out to you is that what you insist is the only possible option for how these things could be is not the only possible option. There are other possibilities. And so when you argue on the basis that there's only one option, it fails immediately because it's based on nothing more than your flimsy assumption, which you've only made for your own convenience.
So, of course, by definition, the universe cannot be necessary in absolute terms.
Well, by your definition of what the universe is and how it operates and what it could be and how it could change and what its origin is, you're trying to transform reality by fiat. You're not the God. You're not the one who speaks a word and has reality conform to it.
And the fact asserting that something that doesn't need to be there, like the universe, but is there just because with no reason, is staggering.
Yeah, good thing that's not what atheism is then, huh? So can we stop pretending that words mean things they don't mean and get back to the actual topic of the discussion?
As staggering, at least as staggering as imagining there is a necessary cause to that universe. So you see, we're exactly on the same level here.
We're not so different, you and I. Yeah, I beg to differ, but okay. So this final clip of me talking, I will play this one because this one will be a bit confusing if I don't provide this context. I'm going to show exactly what he showed of me talking, but I'm actually going to include quite a lot from before that as well, because I think it's important to remind ourselves of what the discussion was about at this point and why I was saying the things I was saying.
It's impossible that 2 plus 2 makes anything else than other than 4.
Yes, that's a matter of definition. That's a matter of human language. 2 plus 2 does not exist. It's not an entity. It's not out there in reality. It's a completely different topic. It's completely irrelevant to whether some entity can necessarily exist, let alone whether it actually does. It's so obviously not a demonstration of the reality of the thing you're claiming that one might almost think that you don't have any demonstration of the reality of the thing you're claiming. That you have no concrete entities for examples, that you have to turn to things that are distinctly not that, and in fact aren't even really things at all, like that in a system of defined axioms and rules, certain conclusions inevitably follow from certain premises.
Okay?
No, not really.
2 plus 2 equals 4 in this universe.
No, in the universe there's no 2 and there's no 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4 in math. If you would like to disagree, please point to 2 in the universe. Not 2 of something, because that's just those things. That's not 2. No, point to 2 itself. Yeah, 2 doesn't necessarily exist. 2 doesn't exist at all. That's what we mean when we say math is abstract. You're talking about an entity that existed before anything else, that necessarily exists as an actual thing, and caused the universe. Show me something like that, or at least give me a reason to believe something like that exists or can exist. Show me that saying something like that exists in real life is a series of words that's even meaningful in relation to reality. Alright, so that's what I said. I think it's reasonably clear. Maybe you could quibble with it a little bit here and there, but we'll see what the objection is and we'll go from there.
This is the last objection, and to be honest, the silliest of all. He's basically picking up on the example that I gave about the 2 plus 2 equals 4 being a necessary condition, just to illustrate what I meant by necessary in absolute terms.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is you were trying to illustrate that it makes sense to speak of the necessary reality of supposedly existing entities, like God, by appealing to a completely different meaning of the word necessity, the necessary truth of certain logical implications within abstract mathematics. These are not only entirely different types of things, they're also entirely different types of necessity. It's conflating two very different applications of the word. And so your illustration does not help in any way to make your point, because you're illustrating something totally different and non-analogous that doesn't apply to the thing you're talking about, unless you're willing to concede that God is merely a mathematical abstraction, but I don't think you are.
Of course, I don't believe that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is God.
Never said you did, not the point.
But the silly rebuttal is, show me where 2 is in reality. Not 2 things, show me 2. Now, this assumption, this way of thinking, that if you cannot see something or touch something, if something is abstract, as he said, then it does not exist.
Which is not what I said. What I said was, when we say math is abstract, we mean the quantities themselves are not things with actual existence. Of course, they don't exist on the level of concrete things, but they also don't exist on the level of abstract things, like thoughts or events or whatever. They're not something of the outside world, the universe at large. They're something of the system of math only. They're abstractions. You're confusing abstract as in intangible with abstract in the sense of mathematical abstraction. This is a different meaning of the word. If you want to understand what I meant by abstract, here's the Wikipedia page on mathematical abstraction. That's what I'm talking about. And when I say point to 2 in the world, I don't mean physically show me a tangible 2. I mean make it make sense to say that there is 2 out there in the universe. That mathematical quantity or equality, which is intrinsically void of any real-world connection, extends outside of mathematics into the universe in general. Show me that it makes sense to talk about there being 2 without adding of something.
Is philosophical suicide. is hyper-materialism, that it's going to just destroy atheism.
Yeah, again, you're just confused on the terminology. This has nothing whatsoever to do with materialism.
This was, I thought, it was already settled probably 500 years ago with Descartes, when Descartes started arguing against these hyper-materialist guys that denied even the reality um, of things.
Materialists were denying the reality of things? Then what is there to be material? I'm guessing you just missed the word abstract. Also, I don't really know what argument you're talking about, materialism versus dualism, but that's a different question from whether the abstractness of mathematical quantities does or does not represent something really existing in the world. I'm not seeing the connection.
And Descartes basically said, well, since I think and since I perceive that I'm thinking, the only fact that I perceive that is a proof that I am something. I am a thinking thing, Descartes said.
Yeah, and I agree, but what does that have to do with whether mathematical abstractions are actually existing things in the real world beyond the system of math? Nothing is the answer.
And you can say whatever you want. You can say that somebody's deceiving me, that my senses are deceiving me, that whatever. But as long as I perceive something, that's something, even if it's totally abstract and not and totally subjective, you cannot say that it's nothing.
Yes, thoughts are abstract in the sense of intangible, not in the mathematical sense. And so if you have a thought, or in other words, if something happens, that's something, it's not nothing, and we call the thing that's doing the thinking you, which again has nothing to do with the topic. The question is about mathematical quantities and other abstractions, which intentionally, by the design of the system of math, are not real things, not things at all, not references to real things or representations of real things or anything like that. And the question is, are they in fact not what mathematics claims they are and requires that they are, and they're actually real things out there in the world, in the way that a thought is an actually real thing out there in the world, an actually real occurrence, a thing that really happens, regardless of whether it's concrete or abstract. Now, your answer seems to be yes, because you can think of them. You can have a thought, which is real, and that thought can be of two. You can think to yourself, two. You can think this all day long. Sure, I agree. A lot of thought was spent on mathematical abstraction. These things have been thought about a great deal. But does thinking about something grant it actual existence? If you think about it hard enough, suddenly a two will jump out of the system of math and into actual reality. No.
But here we are back again, 500 years later, a guy argued that if something is abstract, then it does not exist.
No, if something is a mathematical abstraction, it doesn't exist. That's the point of that kind of abstraction. Of course, abstract things exist, at least in some sense. Things like you're probably thinking of. Feelings, states of being, events, stuff like that. Just things that aren't tangible. They're not objects. But that's not the kind of abstract we mean when we say math is abstract. What we mean when we say math is abstract is that it's completely disconnected from the real world. Any specific application is stripped away so that whatever you do has no real world meaning. It only has meaning within the system. That's why the same concepts can be applied so generally when you apply it to the real world, because within the system, nothing is tied to any particular real world phenomenon. And so when I said, this is what we mean when we say math is abstract, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not just trying to tell you it's intangible, like a feeling. Anyway, about the Descartes thing, it's kind of funny that you're surprised at an atheist having the nerve to question hundreds of years old theological arguments. I'm not exactly sure what you expected, but in any case, you seem to be implying that Descartes' argument of I think therefore I am is somehow based on this idea of the contents of your thoughts having real existence. It's not. Now, in the Meditations, he does talk about ideas having existence. This is well after he's established that if he conceives of something, he must exist. That part's in Meditation 2. The part about the ideas is in Meditation 3, which is no longer an argument about whether he exists, it's an argument about whether God exists. And with regard to ideas themselves, or the contents of them, he points out that ideas don't have what the philosophers call actual or formal reality, which of course is what I was talking about, but only objective reality. And by this, he doesn't mean objective as opposed to subjective. He means objective as in being the object of thought. He points out that the nature of the idea itself is such that it requires from itself no formal reality other than what it derives from my own thinking, of which it is a mode, or a style of thinking. Which is exactly right. This is what I'm saying. Your ideas exist as a mental state, as a mode of thinking, as an event, or however you want to think about it. But that doesn't mean that what the ideas represent, what the contents of them are, actually exist, have formal reality. He goes on, but for the idea to possess this objective reality rather than another, it must surely obtain it from some cause in which there is at least as much formal reality as the objective reality contained in the idea itself. So basically, your ideas have to come from somewhere. They have to have some kind of a cause. They're not just originating out of nothing, based on nothing. As you can see in this part where he explains that from observing himself, he can acquire ideas like duration and number, and then apply this to anything he wants. Now, of course, Descartes takes this in directions that I deeply disagree with, but those are different arguments and different points altogether, just based on this foundation. And there's no reason for me to get into that aspect of it here. You're not using this as an argument for God, but you are trying to bring this up as an argument against my position on the lack of actual existence of the number 2, despite the fact that Descartes doesn't disagree with me, as far as I can tell. It's possible that you were just confused about what I was trying to say, but I'm telling you now that what I was trying to say is not so different from what Descartes said. Of course, it's not like it would matter anyway. If Descartes completely disagreed with me, which of course he does on many, many things, that wouldn't mean anything. That's just an appeal to authority. An authority who I don't even recognize as being one. I haven't developed my opinions on this matter by just picking out some guy who I think sounds important and going, well, he said it, so it must be true.
Of course, it does not exist as a material reality made up out of atoms and electrons and protons and energy, of course.
The question is not about material or immaterial. The question is, do the contents of a concept, not the concept itself, that's a mental state, but the contents of it, have actual, or as Descartes put it, formal existence? Do they exist in the broader reality, or are they glorified figments of the imagination? And my position, along with Descartes, is that no, these things don't have actual existence. They have a sort of existence, what he calls objective reality, basically meaning it's real as an object of thought, but that's not real in the way anybody means when they say something's real, when they say it actually exists. And as Descartes said, this goes for other things as well, like the concepts of numbers, which is the basis of our disagreement here.
But saying that it does not exist just because it's abstract, again, it's philosophical suicide. You know what else is abstract? Your thoughts are abstract.
Yeah, but again, not the kind of abstract we're talking about. Thoughts are real. They're abstract in the sense that you've taken it to mean, and they're real. Setting that aside because it's not the topic, what about the elements of abstract math? What would it mean for just 2 to be actually real in the world in this way? If you had 2 potted plants, there would be 2 potted plants. The 2 plants exist, and it's a true fact about the universe that those plants are 2 plants. But if you just have 2, not 2 plants, not 2 anything, not even the concept of 2, just 2, period. I have 2. What do you have? 2 happened. What does that even mean? If you have the 2 without the of something, you have nothing. If 2 happens, nothing happened, because 2 isn't a thing. It's nothing that exists. It's so nothing that the sentences I have 2 or 2 happened, if not intended as shorthand to say I have 2 of something or 2 of something happened, could almost be considered ungrammatical because of how badly they fail to mean anything. And that's the point. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. Although to be honest, I didn't expect to spend so long doing it. It was a very minor point of the video. I didn't expect it to be this huge chunkier response, but I guess it's good to clarify.
And if you really want to get to the end and bring your argument to a conclusion, you should argue that whatever goes around in your mind, that feeling that you have about thinking anything, is actually Nothing.
A feeling is a real occurrence. It's a real emergence from real physical processes within the human brain and overall nervous system. Even if it came from a soul or something, it's still an occurrence. Something actually manifested into the world. You keep trying to find ways to equate mathematical concepts with things that are totally different from them. In your original video and now, you keep trying to present it as if the discussion of one has some bearing on the discussion of the other, as if they're analogous to each other, but they're just not.
Your thought process is nothing. It does not exist.
Listening back to what I said, I don't think it was that unclear what I actually meant. And I think that overall you've really dodged the point here. Because the point was that you were trying to use necessity in the sense of necessary implications within logical systems to demonstrate the meaningfulness of saying that an entity is logically necessary. I don't see how anything I said could cause any confusion on that point. And I also don't think you're confused about that distinction. It's somewhat akin to if I said, my cat is grammatically correct. And that makes sense to say because look, sentences can be grammatically correct. It doesn't make a lot of sense as an example. It's mixing up categories, and that's the actual point of what I was saying, which has been avoided here by focusing on these other tangential issues.
So it's a total delusion that you have, and I can totally dismiss whatever you say, because whatever you say is based on some thoughts that are in your mind that, based on what you just said, do not exist.
Based in no way on anything I said. But keep looking for more excuses to dismiss stuff you don't want to hear. That was the whole point of your video, after all.
And that was it. That was pretty much it. That's the end of the first 31 minutes of rebuttal, of a 1 hour and a half, possibly, of rebuttal, of a simple definition. I consider that already a win. If I put out a simple video of 20 minutes where I just illustrate a very basic definition of God, and one of the most popular atheist channel on YouTube gets triggered to the point of creating a 3 parts rebuttal, each of which 30 minutes long. Wow. That's a big win.
You're more than welcome to think of it that way if you like. The way that you process this is up to you. None of my business. I would suggest, though, that before you take it that way, you have a look at some of the other members of that club for a little perspective. I'm not known as one who enjoys climbing trees all that often. I find I have much more fun scrounging around on the ground.
Is there anything else in that video?
Probably, I don't know. It's 31 minutes. I'm not going to watch that. Boring.
Not really. A couple of places where he loses it, starts dropping insults, F words.
Why would I have to lose it to drop an insult? You need to understand, my videos are the product I'm producing for the enjoyment of the world. I've been doing this for a dozen years. There's not a lot of emotion left here. I pick and choose my vocabulary and modulate my voice in the way I think is going to work well. Sorry, audience, for removing the illusion. I don't mind pulling back the curtain and letting you have a peek. The thing's pretty thin and threadbare as it is. It's pretty well translucent.
Not that worth it. Some ad hominem fallacies.
Oh, really? That's an interesting thing to say and then just move on. Okay, at what point in my video do I say something along the lines of, you are personally inadequate, therefore your argument is flawed or your facts are incorrect? I'd love for you to provide me the time at which that occurred.
But I must say that he gave me very interesting interior decoration advice. I hope you like my plant here.
Oh, that was me. I already took responsibility for that, but now you've given it to me too. Double responsibility, sweet. And yes, I do like your plant. Could have been bigger, but I guess that was the joke. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the plant and the joke. Genuinely funny.
Oh, one more thing, a suggestion. When I watch your video, I got kind of dizzy from this dancing that you keep doing. Can you keep still when you talk? I like you. I really like you. I think you're a very good guy. You're a very fine guy. Please stay still. You got me dizzy.
Oh man, you're telling me all the wrong things here. Do you know how long people have been telling me that it's disconcerting that I don't wear gloves? Or that my videos are too long and repetitive? A good 70% of the way I make my channel is just designed to piss off people who complain. I didn't realize I was making people dizzy though. That's funny.
All right, just joking.
Cool. Look, that's great. This and the potted plant, that warms me up to you a lot. Now I think you're a good dude, okay? Your ideas, they're kind of annoying. The straw men, also annoying. The consistent failure to make distinctions, really annoying. That's one of my pet peeves. But you know, I always appreciate a good-natured response with a sense of humor, and I will say, that's what I got here. So, you know, take the argument part of the video, which of course is most of it, as what it is, which is arguing on the internet. That's just a thing I have fun with. You seem to have fun with it too. We're those kind of weirdos who get our kicks with this kind of thing. That's the case with most of the people I respond to, I think. I don't got a problem with you. You're cool. None of this is personal. If you find yourself in town, let's have a drink.
Looking forward for the next 2 rebuttals. I hope they're more interesting than your first one.
Probably not. You can probably just skip it. Although at this point, part 2 is already out, so I guess you didn't skip it. I've watched a little bit of it. I'll probably get to it. The problem is I make 4 videos a month, and like you say, it's not always the world's most interesting discussion. So if something way more interesting comes up, who knows? But I watched some of it, and I do have some stuff to say already, so we'll see.
See you later.
All right, ciao, dude. So for the rest of you, thank you for watching. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month helps a huge amount, and enormous thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. For early access, email list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.